that bag, you know exactly what you're going to do. You know if you're gonna Cadillac it in, or you know if you're going to third. All right, we don't have the luxury at second base to round that bag, hit the brakes, and get back. Outfitters are too close, and if they're not close now, as a 13-year-old, by the time you're 16, you're going to regret it. They're going to get close. They're going to have the arm strength to throw right behind you.
If you didn't hear the word he keeps using, Cadillac, and O'Kyle talked a lot about that. Like that is a sign of base runners that know what they're doing, that know the idea of, as a leadoff, I hit a ball in the gap, and why isn't he? What a lazy player! He's not tearing it around first base looking to possibly get to third. No, he understands the situation, and so by Cadillacing, meaning he knows I'm not looking to stretch this to third because it's probably a bang bang play if I even have a shot. Shutting it down and literally Cadillacing Deion Sanders for you Cowboy wannabe fans, that you're slowly getting into second base, and it's not necessarily a hot dog thing as it is. I understand the game, and boy, these guys are well coached because they understand that off the bat that kid knew he was going to get a double, and that's why he took the approach that he did. Now it's a little bit different for an 8 and 9-year-old, but 11s, 12s, 13s, that should be setting in.
We taught them, anyone that played for me, they were making their own reads at 9, at 8. Right. I mean, I was like, guys, if you fail, I'll teach you, but you're learning and you're growing. It's where the game is, and you know I teach math as well, and one of the questions I get on a daily basis is, do I need to show my work? And my answer is, well, how good at math are you? Right? In other words, look, if you're really good, if your brain's working really fast, don't let me slow you down. Go. Don't show the work. Go. But if you're not really good, I can't help you if I don't know what you're doing. And the same thing is true with base runners. If you're really good, and eventually you want them to be really good, go. Don't let me slow you down. Right? But if you're not really good, I'll help you if you look. I'd rather you not look, but I'll help you if you look. Right? Same idea. Okay.
I know. I think when we watched Ripken, I think it was last year, maybe not last year, and our kids were up on the hill, and I can't remember what hitter, but there was a lazy fly ball in right field, and he sprinted out of the box, and he was standing on second as he dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And you know, our kids, he's on second, and I said, but that's because when he left the box, he was going, you know, and he took off. And that was the one thing that I definitely noticed with him. Regardless of where the ball was, they were coming out of the box looking for an extra base.
Yeah.
You know?
So with respect to that, I got to get to your question then. But with respect to that, I tell them, look, if you pop it up, you're allowed to be pissed. You just got to be pissed running. You know, like you're not allowed to just. And no, you're allowed to be upset, but you got to run, be upset. You got to run upset.
The other thing I'll say though is kids in the game, they'll forget about it a lot of times, and the coaches will just yell Cadillac, and they'll remind them.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say too is took a ton of satisfaction in watching our players coach our other players, right? Like they just knew, and it wasn't like they were being attacked. It was just like, come on, you know, right? Like if someone will make a turn, and will get back to second base, and like second base isn't a round bag, and I'm like, yeah, is it? Right? Like, yeah, you got it, yeah.
I think that's when you talk about culture building. Like when you see those pieces happening in your game, you know you're getting there, right? Yeah. Like it's not all on me, the coach. My responsibility to know these pieces. Right. My kids are getting it.
Yeah,
I'm hearing
and the next time we'll talk about like how you build it. You know, today's more about a what do you need to know, help you, but next time is more about a how you build it. What was your question?
One-way leads.
Oh, the one-way leads. Okay, so this is what's that? Yes. So left-handed pitchers, from my perspective, anytime I see a lefty, oftentimes I'll go up and down the dugout and say, it's a track meet, boys, it's a track meet. And what I mean by that, it should be easier to run a lefty. It should be easier. You know, right-handers, we have this focus that we have to look at, and it becomes like, it's harder. But with a lefty, what we do, and I'm not saying this is right, again, I could be convinced otherwise, but right now, this has served us well. We go on our one-way leads and what we call first move. So when there's a left-hander out in the mound and I get my lead, first of all, Doug, you want to hold me on?
Yeah.
You be the first baseman. So with a right-hander, I'm to the back of the bag because I'm going to go straight line, back edge to back edge. Back of the bag, back edge to back edge. With a left-hander, I'll teach our guys to really get up in that baseline. And then I'll also tell them to just get a slightly bigger lead. Just a slightly bigger lead to make him think, is he going somewhere? And then, so a one-way lead means the minute he lifts his leg, this guy just shuffles back. He shuffles back in this direction, and he's processing what that pitcher's doing. If the pitcher throws home, then he gets his secondary like he normally would. But on a one-way lead, the advantage is if you shuffle back, and then he decides to pick over, now you're going to be here in plenty of time. And you're to the inside of the bag. So because you're here in plenty of time, and because you're to the inside of the bag, I can get right here as big as I want. And then as a first baseman, if that throw is up the line a little bit, I can block him, legally block him. I'm entitled to that bag. All I'm doing is going hard into my bag, right? So one of the things you don't want to do with a lefty, you see it with a righty. With a righty, you'll see guys come in and they'll do that, and they'll literally give that first baseman room to get any errant throw. But those left-handers, when those left-handers get on the mound, we're to the inside of the bag, he slides back, he's throwing over, boom, right? And then you're really putting a lot of pressure on that lefty to throw a strike. And I'm just going back into the bag. I've never, ever, ever seen anyone called on it. But you'll see guys fighting like crazy to get over the top on bad throws. So that's what we do with that one-way lead. And if we give a steal, so far, the older they get, the better they get at transitioning and throwing. I might reconsider it, but right now, even at the high school level, we go on first move. The minute he lifts up, we're on.
Why wouldn't you take a shorter lead though, right?
We take a shorter lead when we want to go, but ever so slightly shorter, not enough to draw a throw, ever so slightly. And when he lifts up, then we're gone.
Why wouldn't you do the same thing with a righty as opposed to a lefty going into block?
So you could. The difference is with a lefty, when he lifts that leg, our first move is back, and now we're processing, right? So because we've shortened that distance down, I have time to go in standing up. With those right-handers, generally what we do is we just say get to the back edge, get your comfortable lead. Now that's another teaching point with a steal. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get so big that you don't feel like you can get back. Okay, the best lead is the lead where you feel safe here, so you're not in a twitchy position to go one way or the other. And then wherever you're comfortable, when you practice this, wherever you're comfortable, hopefully your back edge dive or your back edge steal. Okay, so that's the difference. That's a teaching point. And again, next week maybe we'll talk about that, how you do that in a practice with your lefties and your righties, and you implement it so they know it. And then your first base coach just makes a subtle little, hey, lefty, front edge, righty, back edge, just something to that effect.
One more thing about base running. Can you talk about why it sounds obvious, but you've talked about why it's not, why a kid needs to be able to score from second on a double, a two-out double?
On a 2 outs, which should be easy.
I'm sorry, no, you're right. On a double, 1 out. Like kids, in other words, that go to tag. And
that might
kids
be public enemy number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that might be the one where I'm not sure why, but I mean it's probably psychological in nature. So the situation he's talking about is a runner on second base less than 2 outs, okay? And there's a ball hit to the outfield. And for whatever reason, I guess runners feel like they're conflicted between moving in the direction of third base and tagging if it gets caught to advance to third base. So the absolute, in my opinion, the absolute worst thing that could happen is if that batter hits a double and you can't score from second base. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it'll happen to you. All right, and the reason why it happens is because that ball gets hit into the outfield and that runner isn't sure whether it's going to get caught or whether it's going to fall. And in his indecision, he goes back to the bag thinking, well, if he catches it, I'm going to score. Well, the ball had some height and it was descending like this. It wasn't hit on a line drive. And it did fall, but the outfielder picked it up real quick, turned, threw it in, and all he got was third base. Right? So that piece, how you teach that piece, it takes a little time. It takes a little effort to get them away from second base. Be willing to realize that if he's actually running away from the play, you can retreat, tag, and get to third base. That is something you can do so long as your eyes are on the outfielder. You can walk away from second base, see the ball caught, run, touch second base and tag. You can do that. The one thing that I'm constantly telling them in the moment, just trying to communicate how important this is I'm just saying we got to score on doubles from second base. We have to score on doubles from second base. If you're going to err one way or the other, please make the error in that direction. Go in that direction. And some of I've seen it with really good baseball players. I've seen baseball players hit balls off of fences and get singles. Because there was runners on first and second, and the ball was hitting the air. And that guy at second base clogged everything up, that now we either got the bases loaded or one run scored, now we're still first and second, right? So if that lead runner is at second base, and there's a ball hitting the outfield, Doug's bringing it up because he knows how much it can clog things. He has got to start moving away from second base, because if he only advances one base, you're gonna have bases loaded. You might even have first and second if he's lucky enough to score. But that is a critical component to base running at second base. And again, you practice it. You hit fly balls and you train them what to do. They have to be willing to get off the bag, to keep your eye on the outfielder. When it's caught, go back. If it falls, score.
And a component to that Kyle constantly teaches is the fact that you want your runners, you talked about runners making their reads on their own. The minute that ball is hit, that they turn their back to the infield and they see the ball. So now, when I see that high ball that they're going to be camped under in right center, yeah, I can go back to the bag because I see the outfielders camped under that and there's no question. But if I'm always turning my body or looking to the coach, that becomes a read where now they're dependent on me and they probably aren't making the best read or the quickest read. Right?
So I'll take another question here, but I tell people this. When someone asks me, Kyle, how do you evaluate a well-coached team? I say, well, hitting could be God-given, or they could be getting hitting lessons from someone else. I dismiss the hitting piece. Pitching, those guys could have rocket arms, or they can be getting lessons from somewhere else. I don't judge it. Infield, yeah, a little bit. You know, I always say the best defensive team is the most accurate throwing team. You know, so infield defense a little bit, but base running. Base running is not instinctual. It has to be taught. The players do not go on a field and they don't show up to practice going, are we going to base run today? Because that's all I want to do. I don't want to hit. I just want to run the bases. They don't do that, right? They do it when they're real little. That's what they do when they're little, right? They like to run, but to teach base running, that's coaching. That's never instinctual. It's always good coaching. So that's the answer to how do I evaluate good coaching. If they know how to run the bases, someone has taught them how to run the bases. Yep.
With positioning, infield, outfield with players, what's your thought on when the players should start? I'm a firm believer they should know each position, the basics of it.
Oh, okay.
But when do you start to look at them specializing besides pitcher?
Yeah.
Okay, specializing, grooming.
Yeah.
In that 6 to 5, 7 to 9, the 3 to 2 positions.
I'll tell you what. I think a more flexible player is a better player. The one exception is catcher. Okay, that position is so unique to the sport, and it's so important to the sport that you got to get good at it if you want to play it at a high level. So if you're a catcher and you see yourself as a catcher, you need to catch. You need to get behind the plate and you need to do it often. Because what happens with catchers is they confuse the block with the field, and that's really hard to reconcile when you're flexible. Third baseman and catchers. Infielders, just play infield. Okay. The thing that I notice is when players get married to a position, it creates tension on the team. It creates tension with the coaches. It makes for a tough kid to recruit later on. You know, the one position that has that glamour attached to it is shortstop. And I get it. I get it. If you talk to college coaches will say, well, we recruit shortstops, then move them to different positions. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I know why it's a glamorous position. But, you know, if you're married to shortstop and then you go to college and they want to make you a second base, it'd be nice if you actually knew how to play second base. And I tweeted something the other day, great teams make great sacrifices. And, you know, when you're done playing this game, or you're